Today I'm going to be winterizing a 2021 Coleman 17B. So here's what I have for supplies and tools. I've got about 2.5–3 gallons of RV antifreeze. I actually have a little bit more if I need it, but that should be good. I've got a little Camco hand pump for the RV antifreeze. I've got an 1 1/16" socket on a 1/2" ratchet with an extension for the anode rod. I've got a fitting so that I can run compressed air, so I can hook compressed air up to the city water connection. I've got dryer sheets to stuff throughout the camper to help with rodents, and I've got an impact with a square drive bit on it. And then I've got my little Harbor Freight Fortress compressor with a regulator. That's key so that we can dial pressure down to 35–40 psi so that we don't overpressurize the system. So that's the supplies I'm going to be using, and we're going to get started by draining the low point drains and the water heater. Here we are at the back of the camper. Here's the low point drains, and then right in here we've got our anode rod and our pressure relief valve, and we're going to need to take the anode rod out and then open the pressure relief valve just to help it drain faster. We'll crack this open. I think we got some pressure in here. Okay, got that cracked open. Then we can pull that. This anode rod looks okay, but it's starting to go away right at the top there. So we probably got another season in it, but showing a little bit of wear there. So it's cracked open, so we're going to let all this stuff drain out, and while that's going, we can go inside and access the water heater bypass valves, and also get access to the pump where the inlet is going to be for RV antifreeze. So here we are inside the camper, and I've already taken my impact with the square drive bit and pulled the 2 little screws off of this panel. There's just one on each side. Then you can move this panel and gain access to the water heater, and we're just going to flip these valves into bypass mode so that when we pump RV antifreeze through the system, it just bypasses the hot water heater and does not fill up the tank. Then if we go back up to the front here, I flip the bed up, and there's 2 more screws, one at the bottom of the panel, one at the top. I've pulled both of them out. Now we can move that panel, and that will gain us access to this hose right here. That's what we're going to drop in our jug of RV antifreeze. And then if you see right on the end of that, or right where that connects, we've got a white bypass valve there. And what that does is it switches from sucking water out of the freshwater tank to sucking water through this hose. Back out here, everything's drained, so I'm going to put the anode rod back in, close the pressure relief valve, and put the plugs back in our low point drains. All right, we've got the water heater closed back up again. We've got our plugs back in the low point drains. So now I'm going to take my adapter fitting here, and we're going to hook it up to the city water connection. And so we've got everything closed, all the faucets, everything's sealed up, so it's going to hold pressure. And there again, I've got pressure dialed down to 35–40 psi. We're going to hook this up. It's going to pressurize the system. Now I'm going to go around. I'm going to open up all the different points, the low point drains again, all the fixtures inside the camper, and we're going to flush all the water out. So we'll start here with the low point drains. Now we'll go inside and get the fixtures inside. We'll start with the kitchen sink. Now we'll move into the bathroom. set the shower head on the floor there. Try not to spray ourselves. Then we'll move to the toilet. Again, we want to be careful not to go full throttle on this thing because the air will definitely spray out some water. All right, we're good with that. So we're going to step back outside. We're going to disconnect our air. All right, we've got our low point drains, our caps off of those again here. Now we've got our hand pump hooked up, and I'm going to pump RV antifreeze through this until I start seeing it come out the back. This step is really only to get it in the first couple feet of hose here, right where it goes in by the pump. And it's maybe not necessary, but I feel like it's better to be safe with this than to have to deal with a blown out pipe inside the camper. So we're just going to start pumping here. And the main reason we've got the plugs off the low point drain is so that we don't have back pressure here fighting us. If we had everything closed up, we just simply would pressurize it and not be able to pump anymore with this. But since we've got something open, we can pump through. Okay, I can see it dribbling out the low point drains, so that's all we need to do with the hand pump. I'm going to go put the caps on those low point drains, and then we're going to go inside. I'm going to do my best to get this. It's a tight space and it's tricky with the camera in here, but the first thing we're going to do now that we're back inside, and we have not opened up this bypass valve yet. We needed to keep that closed when we were pressurizing the system and then when we were pumping RV antifreeze through the system. Actually, probably didn't matter for that, but definitely for pressurizing the system. So now the next thing we're going to do is there's two little tabs here on this housing. I press them in, then we can pull it out. This is a little screen filter, and there's not a lot here, but we did find a little speck of something. So now's a good time to do that when the system isn't full of water. And we'll put that in, press it in, make sure the tabs lock in place. Now we're going to flip this bypass valve to the open position where it's going to draw in from this hose that we've got going to our jug of RV antifreeze here. So now I'm going to climb out of here and we're going to turn on the pump. Here's a little bit less close-up view of what that looks like with our jug there and the hose in there. We've got everything closed, so we're going to build up pressure when we turn on the water pump here. So right up here we've got our water pump switch. We're going to flip that on. It's immediately going to start drawing RV antifreeze out of the jug, just like we were hoping for. So that's going to kind of start building up pressure. In the meantime, we can go around and we can start opening up all the fixtures until we get the antifreeze coming through. So there we go. We got that looking good there. We'll do the hot water one too. Then we'll step into the bathroom. There's the cold. Here's the hot. It's critical that you go into that access panel and run this through the pump, because if you only were to pump it in the side in the city water connection, your pump would still have fresh water in it and it would be susceptible to freezing, and damage would almost for sure happen to it. So you definitely have to access that pump and pickup tube assembly to send RV antifreeze through the whole system like we're doing here. Now the last thing to do here is the toilet. Alright, we're looking good with that. So we can step back out here. I'm curious how we're looking. We still have a little bit in the bottom there. So now what I'm going to do is we can go back in here. We're going to close that valve again, pull the tube out of there, and then we can button this up. And then we're going to take the rest of the 3 gallons, and we're going to probably take and dump a gallon down the kitchen sink and a gallon down the toilet, so that we've got a little bit in each of those holding tanks. Maybe we'll split up the gallon between the sink and the shower just to make sure that those traps are completely full of RV antifreeze. But that's the next step we're going to do. Okay, I've put the cover back on there, and there are actually 4 screws, one on each corner, but the The far two were not really threaded into anything anyway, so they weren't even holding on when I took out the first two. So now they're put back in there and they're better than they were before. I've turned off the water pump, and then I opened up the sink valve to make sure we had no pressure in the system. And I've poured another gallon down the toilet, another gallon down the sink and the shower. Other way around there, sink and the shower. Now we're gonna go in here and we're going to flip these valves back into the standard position where they will be filling up the water heater. And then we can put this panel back on along with the two screws that hold it. And then we'll be on to the next step. Okay, we've got everything buttoned up, and then the last thing I like to do is kind of go through and wipe up any antifreeze that you've got sitting in the sinks or toilet or anything, just to make sure there's no staining. I don't know that it will stain, but it's an easy thing to do with a couple paper towels. So we've got that done. Then all we need to do is go through and tuck some dryer sheets under the mattresses, stand them up maybe, tuck them in the cupboards, kind of everywhere, sometimes out in the open, sometimes tucked into places. I just like to cover it well with the dryer sheets to help repel the rodents. I also like to plug in some of the little electronic rodent repelling devices if your camper is going to be plugged in over the winter. So once we've got that done, we're pretty much wrapped up and ready to go.